Good morning, everybody. This is Aaron checking in for the house hunt situation here in Dallas. So, if you haven't seen this, first-time home buyer looking to buy a house or townhouse or condo here in Dallas, or the DFW Metroplex, I should say. And about a week and a half into the process, going through working with one of my buddies who's a realtor, and he's done a fantastic job for me so far. Has put me in touch with some great lenders. I've got a lender I think I've narrowed down to and have gone through the pre-approval, pre-qualification process. And so I've now started looking at some houses and properties pretty seriously. So, as is not uncommon here in Dallas right now, that it is, it's a process, man. Depending on your price point, depending on what you're looking at. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people coming to Dallas. People want to be here. It's fantastic for our economy. But as a home buyer, it makes it a little bit tough, especially if you're not coming from a place where this is maybe your second or third home, you've been able to sell your first house, and now you're using to roll that into a down payment where you can come and you're pretty cash heavy starting off. That's just not the case with me. I've been a renter. I'm 30 years old. I've rented since I moved back to Dallas in 2014. So, have definitely done my due diligence and saved a good amount of money, and so feel comfortable with that. But it's about being realistic, and so shopping things that are not going to overextend me, not going to max out my budget, if you will, so that you turn around and you're just house poor and you can't see anybody and you're eating ramen noodles for however many years you're there. And so it's just not the case with me. I'm trying to avoid that and not going to let that happen at all. So I've gone and looked at some properties, and as is common here in Dallas, they're staying on the market for a couple of days, multiple offer situations, full cash offers, cash over asking price, which in most markets is a little bit crazy, but in Dallas has become a very common thing, especially at that starter home, under really that 300,000 mark. So it's definitely tough, and for those that are in real estate, are you representing buyers? You guys are probably seeing this all the time in Dallas, and so it can be frustrating, I know, from an agent side. But from a buyer side too, it's frustrating. It's the first time that you're going through the process. It's the first time I'm going through this process. So it's frustrating. It can be a little bit disheartening. You look and you spend the time, you get put on the updater, and you're searching, you're looking. You go see these houses, and not everyone's going to be perfect. So you can't go in there with a magnifying glass on the first day and say, this has to be this, and this is what, you can. I would encourage you not to, because you're probably just going to be a little bit disappointed each time you leave. But be realistic. Understand that this is a long-term thing. The house may not be the exact way that you want it to right now, but the great thing about, and I guess bad thing about mortgages is you're there for a long time, and that's for some of us or y'all or whoever may be, that may be 3 years and you sell it and try to get something better. That may be 5 years. The average mortgage or average house is held for about 7 years in the United States. So it's a long-term investment. It's not, a lease car. It's not a lease. It's not a long-term lease. It's a purchase. It's an investment. So even if the home or the house is not exactly how you want it right now, you still have some time to fix it. And a big part of that, going back to what these houses you're looking at and your price range and being realistic on that is that I would encourage you, and this is from person to person, and I'm not going to sit here. I'm not a life coach. I'm not a business coach. I am needing some coffee though, so I'm going to drink some coffee while I do this. Also, I've had this mug since I coached college football several years ago, and it's still probably one of my favorite mugs. But anyways, so talking about budget. Now, when it comes to budget, first and foremost, you need to get, whether you think you know where your finances are or anything like that, you need to get pre-approved, pre-qualified. I talked about that in the last video. But once you work through that, work with a lender and get a couple different options and see where you're at, that's going to give you how big of a net you can cast. And depending on where you're at, it's going to give you a lot of options. It may give you a little bit of options, and you may just have to be a little more selective and smart with where your money goes. But most lenders can make it work, and really in most markets, if you want to buy and you have a good agent that knows the market, knows the areas that you're in, if you have a good lender that will work with you, get creative, and give you some advice on some of those things, they can make it work for you. So it's a little bit scary, but it'll work. Um, with that being said, I would encourage people to, when you're looking at homes and you've got a budget, let's say that I pre-qualified for 250,000. So that by no means guarantees that you'll get 250. Like, they're going off of what you get, what you give to them, what you do there, what the process they go through, the underwriting, where they're at as far as the risk that they're willing to take, where they're at in their business, where the market is. So it doesn't guarantee that. So just understand that. The other part of that is, I would encourage you to look at, set a basement price as far as, okay, I'm approved for 250. I don't really have a set area. I'm pretty open. I just know that I want to buy. Be flexible. Look and see that, if 250 is my max, definitely look up to 250. But let's see what's hanging out around 175, 180, 190. Because, number one, if you're getting pre-approved or pre-qualified for that, and you haven't looked at the monthly numbers, they may shock you as much as, depending on what your taxes are, what rates are. Mortgage rates don't fluctuate a ton. We're talking about 1/8 to 1/4%. So not, day to day or month to month, not probably going to be a massive kick for you until rates go up. But it's kind of surprising when you look at, I get pre-approved for this or pre-qualified for this, and it comes back and I see, oh wow, that's way more than I want to spend. And the last thing you want to do is be house poor. You don't want to just scrape by and get your mortgage, your PITI paid, because then what happens when the air conditioning breaks? Home warranty, it will cover that. I understand that, but let's say that you have something happen to your car, or a pet gets sick, or you've got to take an emergency trip because a family member's not doing well. If you max out if you're at your top line, that's all you can do, and you're putting yourself in a real tough financial situation, in my opinion. Also, you may see 250 and think that's there, but you may find an awesome or great house for 200, 210, 215. So in my opinion, why am I going to pay 35, up to 35, if we're saying 215 is the number, why am I paying 35 grand extra just to say that I maxed out what I could do? So and these are all my opinions. Talk to your lawyer, you can't talk to a lawyer. Talk to your agent, talk to your lender, get their opinions. Everybody that's bought a house before will give you an opinion because they're an expert. I'd be careful on that one, but talk to the experts, talk to people that do this day in, day out, that have done hundreds, thousands of transactions. They're not going to steer you wrong, or at least hopefully. The other part about that is if we max out that budget and we go to the very, very top of that, if the appraisal comes back lower than that, the mortgage company, and most people know this, and some don't, so I'm not sitting here calling anybody out. Let's say that you put in an offer gets accepted at 250. The next process is you're going to get an inspection. You're going to find out during that option period what's going on, what's wrong with the house, what's area of concern. All this time working on underwriting for the actual loan, the actual mortgage, getting all that process done. But they're going to send out an appraiser. So they're going to appraise the house. So certified professional is going to go and they're going to look at the house. They're going to look, pull comparables. They're going to do all these things to give you an idea and give an opinion back to the mortgage company what they believe the value of that property is. Now let's go back to that $250,000 house. Let's say that an appraiser goes out and says, hey, this house is worth $220,000. By going all the way up there, and that doesn't change the offer that was accepted. You accepted to pay $250,000. You went under contract with the seller under the assumption that you would be paying $250,000 for that. Now, if that appraisal comes back at $220,000, that mortgage company is going to only lend what they believe that home is worth. They're not going to write a $250,000 note or minus down payment or whatever it is for a house that they say is $220,000 in value. That's like going to a car dealership and the dealer saying, okay, this car is worth 45 grand, and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and pay you and get a loan for 55 grand. It doesn't make any sense. So in that situation, we've got $30,000 to make up to bridge that gap or to make up that ground between loan value and what's actually being offered at closing, or what's being offered. So in that case, especially in a market like Dallas, sellers are not going to cover that. They've got too many offers. There's too many things going on. There's no reason for them to cover that. So you now, as the buyer, have to make the decision, okay, do I back out of this deal because this is not, do I try to back out of this if I can get out of it in the right time frame? Or do you bridge the gap? Do you come with cash in hand and say, you know what, I was going to put X amount down, but I love this property. I'm going to go and bridge the gap for $30,000. Now that's a really, really drastic situation. But by bringing that down a little bit and not shopping the max end, that gives us whatever your percent down is a little bit less. We've got a little bit more cash on hand. I understand if you're going FHA or you're doing some sort of government loan that you may not have that much cash flow, or you may not have that much cash reserve, so it can make it a little bit different, but be flexible. And really the last point on that, finance aside, from just satisfaction looking at these, if I realize and I don't really do my due diligence up front, I get a pre-qualified, pre-approved, but I don't ever get the numbers on that, and I'm looking in the 250s, and I start doing the math, and I'm like, man, I really don't feel comfortable with that, but I do feel comfortable with a 210 house or a 215, or maybe it's 200,000. It's really, really tough mentally to go from that $250,000 home, whether it's the neighborhood, whether it's, the setup, the fixtures, whatever it is. It's really tough from going from that $250,000 home to that $190 because it's just not going to stack up. So I would say look in the middle, shop towards the bottom end because you may be surprised. I'm not saying jump into a home that is lower than your quality or lower than your standard that you set. But there's ways that as we get more information, we go a little bit deeper in the process, we start to see some hard numbers, which your lender should be really, willing to give you. Then we can start getting an idea, because maybe it's 250, but really financially right now, where I'm at, or where you're at, or whoever's at, it's 210 is really where we're at. So we can reset that gauge so that we're more realistic. So we're setting ourselves up for success, and we're not overextending ourselves from a for a financial standpoint, because you never want to do that. I know financial change, people get raises. If you do, kudos to you. You're probably doing a great job. Congrats. But I'm always going to err on the side, for me at least, is to be a little bit more conservative, especially if this is your first home. Chances are, and if you do stay in it for 30 years and that's your forever home, wonderful, fantastic. You only have to go through this process once. But chances are, whether it's for work or family or whatever it is, you're probably going to move. So while it is long term, it may not be forever. So just a bunch of stuff you can consider, really more just, I guess, me talking out loud from what I'm going through in the process. But this is why it's so important to have a great realtor that's done these transactions before, that knows the market that you're in. They're not Nostradamus. They're probably not going to be able to tell you, hey, this house is going to appreciate at 18% over the next 24 months. Like, they may have some idea of what the market's done, but it's, they're going to give you the insight on how these processes are supposed to go. If you get a really good one, they're probably going to be your counselor and your psychiatrist as you go through this process, because it is a little bit nerve-wracking. But I wish you guys the best in your search process. On the realtor side of things, I'm actually finishing up. I'll be done hopefully with all the classes at the end of next week before going out to Vegas for our user conference. And then I'm trying to get that done. So hopefully we'll be on the other side of this pretty soon. But wish you all the best. Happy hunting for homes. Hope you guys have a fantastic week, and happy 4th of July week. Bye, y'all.